I'm using this board. Yeah, sure. Yep. Hi. You had complications signing up. Like
Yeah,
what? What were?
because there was still a couple spots left on the wait list.
Right.
But then when I went to enroll, it said it's closed.
Yeah, it is. It is closed. So the only way it's going to open now is if enough people drop the class that it goes under 350. So it's supposed to be at 350. We let in the wait list, gets it up to like 375, and then people drop it.
It was like 377.
But the critical thing is just if it goes under 350, there'll be openings, but otherwise there won't.
I won't for sure, not even for 1%. So you doubt it's going to drop?
I don't know that it's impossible, but
It's at 372, and it was at 377.
right.
So I was wondering.
I don't know, but probably within a week you would know.
Because I was going to sign up for the wait list. That was the problem. It
Right.
wouldn't even sign up for
Yeah,
the wait
that's
list.
because there is no wait list anymore. The wait list was let in, and
No, I know, but I'm
Right.
saying before the wait list was even let
right,
in.
right. But you didn't. Right, you
Yeah,
didn't.
no,
Yeah,
I
yeah. So that's what I'm saying. It got let in, but then that's not unless it drops below 350. Okay. My office.
Okay.
Yes.
How long do you think the meeting will go?
Half hour,
Okay.
something like that.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you're Lynette?
Yeah.
Hi, Lynette. It's nice to meet you. Good to meet you, too.
So I'll see you today at 3. I'll probably be like a couple minutes early.
Okay,
All right.
that's fine. If people want to, we can just go right from here to there if that's what people want to do.
Okay.
But I don't know if that's what people schedule. You have to do something else in between?
I have class from 1 to 3
Oh,
or
well,
2:50.
okay.
So I'll meet you guys
Okay, that's fine. Okay. Welcome, everybody. This is Psychology 135, Social Psychology. I already have my first typo. We only wish it was spring of 2009, because then we would have summer ahead of us. For those of you who are here today hoping that you will be able to get in if you're not already enrolled, unfortunately, if you are not enrolled right now, there's a very, very low probability that you will be able to get into the class. The entire wait list was let in, and unless enrollment goes under 350, there won't be anyone else let in, and there's no PTE numbers given for this course. Let's see. So all the materials for the course are going to end up going up on Blackboard. They are not there now because Blackboard has been incredibly slow, at least from my computer, from a couple different web browsers. I have been incapable of connecting in anything less than 10 minutes, but as soon as that connection speeds up, all the materials will go up there. So I want to start, they say it's a good idea to do this. I want to start with a little bit of exercise because we're going to be sitting here for a while. I think what you're supposed to do will be self-evident. I'll just take you through it here. So everybody. Okay, if you haven't already. All right. Okay, everybody, stretch to the left. And to the right. And reach as high as you can. Okay. And stand on your tiptoes. And to the left again. And to the right. And okay. All right. Everyone can sit down now. So, if I can get a show of hands, hands, not fingers. Can you raise your hand if you followed either of the last two instructions? If you either said F you or gave me the finger. Oh, this is very interesting. Okay, so let's start with those of you who did. For those of you who did give me the finger, okay, I'm assuming you know what giving the finger means, right? Everybody in here knows what it means, right? That's not a mystery to anyone? No? Okay, good. And for those of you who gave me the finger, you knew I was actually looking out at all of you, right? You may not have known I have a new iPhone with a video recording function. Goes right to YouTube. But you knew I was watching. Okay, and for those of you who gave me the finger, you also knew that at the end of this quarter, I'm going to give you a grade. Right? And man, an F would really, really hurt someone's GPA. Yes, that's right. She was doing the math. Right? If you want to go to med school, grad school, law school, whatever it is, you do not want an F in a class like social psychology, let alone organic chemistry or something else. And yet, some of you decided it was a good idea to give me the finger. Okay, so can I get that show of hands again of who gave me the finger? Come on. Now, I did check, and technically it is against UCLA policy to do that, to give me the finger, but I'm gonna let it go this one time. So raise your hands without fear of reprisal. Who gave me the finger? I can go back and look at the video if you don't raise your hand. Okay, so we've got one guy right in the middle here, woman over here, 2. There were like 15 of you. 3. Okay, back there. Yeah? No? You're thinking about doing it now? Okay. So what's your name? Jackie what? Sanchez. Okay, TAs. Jackie Sanchez. Jackie, why did you give me the finger? You thought it was supposed to be funny. Oh, you know what? You know what would be funny? Go home to your parents tonight? No, I'm kidding. Okay. Okay. Why did you give me the finger? I was curious. Okay, this is very interesting. This is a very different set of responses this year compared to past years, and I'll get to that. There's a reason for that. Okay, so most people say, well, we gave you the finger because, well, you told us to, right? That's a pretty simple answer to give, right? You told us to, okay? And then the question is, well, what's so special about me telling you to? Because I haven't met any of you before, right? You don't even really know, most of you, that I'm actually the professor in this class. Could be someone else, right? But the important thing is that if some stranger sitting next to you whispered to you before class and said, hey, when Professor Matt gets up on stage and starts the class, I want you to stand up and give him the finger, right? Nobody would do that. And yet, when I ask, right, there's some of you who are willing to, in front of 300 of your peers and on video, give your professor the finger. And I'm guessing this is the first time you've done that at UCLA. There's a good chance that if you had done it before, you wouldn't be in this class right now. So, for those of you who did not give me the finger, tell me why those who did give me the finger gave me the finger, right? What's so special about me that I could get these people to give me the finger? Anything? So you got up to do the stretches, so why not jeopardize your entire future? Yes. No. Because I'm the professor, and that means what? I'm the authority figure in the classroom, okay? I'm the authority figure, and as human beings, we have this sort of nasty tendency to conform to authority. Okay, this is Probably not a new idea to most of you. You've probably all had Psych 10 or whatever it's being called these days. You know about Milgram and things like that. People conform, okay, to authority. All right. Now, okay, in this particular case, I set up kind of a conflicting situation for you. Okay? So I'm the authority figure, and in this case, that means two different things. On the one hand, you should do the things that authorities ask you to do, particularly when you're in a classroom. That's kind of the norm. That's how it works. When an authority asks you to do something, you go ahead and do it. On the other hand, there's a norm, okay, that you should be deferential to authority, okay, that you should be respectful of authority. And so here, at the same time, I'm asking you to do something which you should do that would violate the other norm of being deferential and respectful. So this sets up, probably for everyone in the class, regardless of whether or not you actually went through and gave me the finger or not, this sets up a conflictual situation for us where we actually don't know quite what the right thing to do is. Okay? And this creates a tension, a sense of anxiety in our gut, which I like to describe with the technical term, the yucky feeling. Okay? So I think this really produces a feeling within our body that feels uncomfortable. We don't know exactly what it is we should be doing, and we have to figure out which situation am I in. Am I in the sort of deference to authority, respect authority situation, or am I in the give the finger situation? Okay? So, you know, if we need to figure this out when situations are ambiguous, the way we figure this out is we look to others to define the situation for us. Okay? So you try to figure out, well, what's everybody else doing? And if everybody else is giving the finger, then this must be the giving the finger situation. And if everybody else isn't giving the finger, it's probably the respecting the authority situation. Of course, there's always the possibility that the other 349 people in the class are in on the joke, and you're just getting punked right now. Okay, for the 8 of you who raised their hands, you probably came in late and didn't realize I told the rest of the class not to give me the finger. No, that didn't actually happen. So, you know, we try to figure this out. Okay, but as we're doing it, as we're trying to figure out what the situation is, we probably don't even realize that that's what we're doing at the time that we're doing it. Okay? We do it quickly, and we do it without thinking about it, and after the fact, we don't realize, okay, that that's what we've done. But think about how preposterous it is that you would base your decision of whether or not to give the finger to your professor on what a bunch of complete strangers around you are doing or not doing at that particular moment. You wouldn't ask the people around you what you should have for dinner tonight if they're strangers. You wouldn't ask them who you should vote for in the next election. And I don't think you would probably intentionally ask them whether or not you should do something that could jeopardize your future career in academics or whatever field you choose to go in. So this isn't something that we would consciously say is a good idea to base our decision in this particular case on what everyone else is doing, and yet that's what we tend to do. Did you say, I know your last name is Sanchez, your first name is Jackie. Jackie, can you come up on stage? That's right. Give her a little encouragement. The steps are over there. Okay, so just want to give you one more opportunity. I'd like to ask you to give me the finger. Which finger? I don't think there's any ambiguity now about what I'm asking you to do. No? No. Okay, so another round of applause. Thank you. All right, so now she's hiding. Okay. So while you're walking back to your seat, what was different this time?
You're looking straight at me.
I'm looking straight at you. Okay, what else? Nobody else is doing it. You're up here all alone, and there's two major things that are different. When she's up here all alone, she can't look to everyone else to see what they're doing. She can't look to other people to define the situation. Okay? And the second thing is that she can't look to other people to share the blame. Okay? If a bunch of people are giving me the finger, right, then no one person gets that much of the blame. Okay? So this is a concept in social psychology that we call diffusion of responsibility. And the idea is that for any given sort of act that you could engage in, the more people that are responsible for that act, it's kind of like the responsibility gets divided up into fractions and spread across all those people. So if you're alone doing something, you get all the responsibility. If there's 10 people doing it, it's like you get 1/10 of the responsibility. So this makes us less fearful of the repercussions of what we do because we feel like less of the responsibility, less of the blame, okay, will come to us. And this is a very important concept in social psychology. Now, I want to turn to the rest of you, the vast majority of you, who chose not to give me the finger. So let's see a raise of hands of all the people who did not give me the finger or did not say F you. All right, a whole bunch of you. Okay? So for those of you who just had your hands raised, can you tell me why you did not give me the finger when I gave you an instruction to do just that? Because it's mean to do that. What's that? There wouldn't be any consequence for not doing it? Yeah, in the back. The quarter hasn't ended yet. That's a good answer. I'm going to hold him to that in 10 weeks. Anyone else? Disrespectful? You didn't mean it. Okay. So these are all very good, reasonable, logical answers, and they're also all largely bullshit. Okay? Now, the reason I know this is because I've been doing this demo every time I've taught this class for the last 10 years. I've done this over 15 times. And last spring and this time right now are the only times that I haven't had 99% of the class giving me the finger. And I know that because I have video footage of every single class that's ever done this. Okay? And some of them were actually right in this very classroom. So it's nothing about this classroom. I've taught it in here 3 different times. 99% of people have given me the finger. And I have changed exactly one thing between all those times and these last 2 times. Okay? Can anyone guess what that one thing is? I actually said the command. No. Your suit? Suit, yeah. Yeah, so I'm wearing a suit. I wore a suit last time. I wore a suit this time. The other 13 times I've taught this class, I didn't wear a suit. Okay? I'm not a suit and tie kind of guy at all. In fact, I'm going to change because I hate wearing dress shoes. So I'm changing now. So the only thing I have changed is whether or not I was wearing a suit. Okay? What that means when we do experimental research is when you change one thing and you see differences in behavior, that means that one thing was playing a causal role. Now, I'm sure all of you believe the stories you just told me about why you didn't give me the finger. Okay? You're just wrong. Okay? And we're going to spend a lot of time in this class exploring how you're wrong. And I'll explore how I'm wrong too. I don't mean to throw stones here. It's more about the way the human species tends to work. and we're all part of that same species, and we all tend to be wrong a lot of the time. So our experience, whichever decision we made, is usually something like this. Okay? So you see the instruction go up, and you say, I saw the situation accurately and independently on my own. Notice nobody who said they didn't give me the finger said, well, I didn't because nobody else was. Right? So they all said, well, I didn't because I objected to it, I didn't mean it, whatever it was, I'm waiting for 10th week, then I'll give you the finger. Whatever it is, right? People on both sides of this equation, whether people chose to give me the finger or not, said it was because I independently saw the situation, I saw it for it was all by myself, and I made my own decision by myself. Okay? And I would submit to all of you that whether you gave me the finger or not, it wasn't because you figured it out all by yourself. All of you were being influenced by the people around you, and for the vast majority of you who now chose not to give me the finger, okay, it was probably because I was actually more clearly establishing myself as an authority figure with this cue, which really doesn't mean anything, except I chose to put on a suit. It doesn't mean anything, but that influenced a vast number of you. And here's the really interesting thing. Most of you still don't believe me, right? Most of you think that's not what influenced me. But if I showed you video of the last classes, you'd have to say, you know what? We're really a special class. We're so different from all those other classes that came before us. It wasn't your clothes. We're just unique and special, and we don't like to give people the finger. All right? You're all unique and special in your own unique and special ways, but not in this way. Okay? This is not why you didn't give me the finger. So, we are here for the next 10 weeks to talk about social psychology. Okay? And we're going to start with a pretty simple definition, sort of catch-all definition. Social psychology is the study of the impact of a person or group's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors on another person's thoughts, feelings, or behaviors. In other words, it's how we influence each other, and it's how we're influenced by each other. Okay? This is our everyday life. This is our everyday experience. Those are the things we're going to be talking about, and I want to be clear from the outset that you don't have to know the other person's actual thoughts, feelings, and behaviors for it to influence you. All that really matters most of the time is what you believe, what you perceive the other person's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors to be. So you can be wrong, but what you believe to be true is still going to influence you. Okay? So the perceived thoughts, feelings, and behaviors of others can be just as influential or more influential than the actual thoughts, feelings, and behaviors of other people. So my philosophy for this class is, I think, a little different than some of the other classes that are typically taught at UCLA. And when I started teaching this 10 years ago, I had a nice thick textbook full of encyclopedic entries, and I spent the 10 weeks giving, I think, tedious lectures about all the facts of things that we have learned over the last, say, 50 years in social psychology. And at some point, I decided that the significant ideas in social psychology were important enough that it was worth really changing what I did. And so I switched to a system where instead of textbooks and lectures, I focus on 5 hypotheses, 5 really important ideas from social psychology, and instead of textbooks, I have you read trade books. These are books that were meant to be read not just by people who are sort of academic scholars, but smart people in the real world, and all of you are smart people who, as far as I know, have not left the real world just because you're sitting in here. And I have found this to be a better way to go. Now, if you really want the support of a textbook, okay, I can recommend some for you. I think we put some on reserve at the library, but my experience is 99% of the people in here will be just fine without going to find the textbook. You'll have my PowerPoints after each lecture, and the entire lecture will be audio podcast and video podcast. So you basically get all the information as many times as you want to punish yourself by listening, watching, whatever it is. So the class is really based primarily on the lectures, and it's going to be centered around these 5 hypotheses. My overarching goal for the quarter, for the end of the quarter, is that you understand and know these 5 hypotheses, and that if I ran into you in New York City in 5 years on the subway, you'd say, Professor Lieberman, I remember 2 of those hypotheses you told us about 5 years ago. Okay, that would be a great triumph for me. And I tell that story because that actually happened to me. Maybe after I was teaching here 3 or 4 years, someone came up and said, I remember 2 of them. I was like, all right. I hope they're the right 2. My experience is that if you really understand the content of social psychology, it will change you. Okay? When I took social psychology as an undergraduate, a long time ago, I had no idea what social psychology was. I just knew it was something I was kind of supposed to take, and I think there was probably someone I thought who was cute who told me they were taking it. And so I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll take social psychology. What the hell is that? And it certainly changed my life, and my experience is that for a lot of people who take this class, it will really change the way you think about other people and yourselves and how other people think about you and yourself. So I think it's a very useful class. It's not a self-help class. I'm not going to tell you what you should do with your life, but I think there's some obvious implications, and there's a lot of stuff that we misunderstand that I think social psychology can tell us about and kind of arm us with more of the truth of what's really out there. So there are these 5 hypotheses, okay, and we're going to go through them right now. Okay. Hypothesis number 1. Situations are powerful. Okay. Situations exert enormous influence over how we behave, how we think, what we do, how we feel. Okay? It influences us. It influences everyone around us. All the time. You are always in some kind of situation. And this idea has been really the cornerstone of the history of social psychology, that situations are powerful influences over thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. If a social psychologist knew they were going to be stuck on a deserted island and they could only take one good idea from social psychology with them, this is the one good idea most social psychologists would take with them. So that's why it's hypothesis number 1. Everything else builds on this. And really, for my money, the reason why hypothesis number 1 is so important is the first corollary. Situations are often invisible. Okay? Part of the reason situations are so powerful is because they are often invisible, which means we're unaware of them, and things that we're unaware of influence us without us being able to respond. If you're unaware of the influence of something, you can't do anything about it. It's like those public service announcements, knowing is half the battle. Okay, well, we don't know most of the time when it comes to situations. Take authority, for instance, that we already started with. Can you see authority? No, you can't. I mean, today I was wearing a suit, right? But after this class is over, you'll never see me in a suit again, okay? And you're still probably most of the time going to treat me like an authority. Now, somebody else walks in, and let's say I'm down here after class and I'm talking to someone about something, and they walk in, they can't see that I'm an authority, right? My being an authority is something you know, but it's not something you can see. And so if it's not something you can see, other people watching can't necessarily see it either. Imagine that before I came on stage to start the lecture, somebody had held a gun to my head, without any of you knowing it, and said, if you don't spend at least 4 minutes talking about cantaloupes during your lecture, right, I'm going to blow up your computer or hurt you or whatever it is. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. The critical thing is, you would have no idea why the heck it is I started talking about cantaloupes in the middle of my lecture. Okay, I'm about 30 seconds into talking about cantaloupes now. I got about 3.5 more minutes to go. Okay? But no, you would have no idea because you would not be able to recognize the situation that I was in. Now, I would know, but none of you would. You would have no idea why I was talking about this nonsense, and that's because the situation that I'm in, if that were the case, would be invisible to you. So you'd have a lot of trouble making sense of what the heck was going on in that situation. Now, an additional sort of piece to think about here is even when we do recognize that there's some situational pressure that's present, some what we call situational constraint, meaning that the person's behavior is constrained by something about the situation that they're in, even if you recognize that, there's a really good chance that your theory of how the situation affects the person would not be a very good theory of how the situation affects the person. We tend to underestimate the power of situational pressures. Sometimes they're invisible to us, but even when we know about them, we tend to underestimate their influence. The second corollary of hypothesis 1 is that situations influence our perception of others in unexpected ways. So situations don't just influence people's behaviors, they influence our perceptions of those people. So you're the observer right now. Situations affect your perception of what it is that you're seeing around you. And I mean this in two different ways. And the first, is that the situation that the person you're observing is in can influence your perception of that person. So there's a famous study by Yakov Trope. You don't need to know the name. If you did, I would have put it up on the screen. There's a famous study by Yakov Trope where he showed people sad faces and happy faces and so on. And he would have subjects rate how sad does that face look right now. So maybe there's a 15-point scale and you say that person looks like an 11 on a 15-point scale. They look pretty sad because they've got a sad face on. On some trials, that's all that would happen. On other trials, you would see that same sad face and be told where the person was. And if you were told that that person was currently at a funeral when that picture was taken, you rate the exact same face as looking sadder. Okay? Now the question is, how sad does the person look? Not how long will they be sad or what are they sad about. How sad do they look? That shouldn't change based on where you know the person is, but it does. Okay? On the other hand, our situation, while we're observing things, can also influence our perception of others. So there are famous studies that have been done showing that your judgments of yourself, of your future, of other people, are all reliably affected by whether or not it's sunny or cloudy or rainy outside. Okay? People think they are more likely to get cancer at some point in the future, and they think other people are more likely to get cancer at some point in the future if it's rainy out right now than if it's sunny out. Okay? I can assure you whether it's rainy or sunny out right now has nothing to do with whether anyone else is going to get cancer in 20 years. But it influences us. So our current situation sneaks in and affects the way we think about and make sense of other people. The last corollary to hypothesis 1, and it is the last one, is that the history of situations that you've been in can also shape your experience and reactions today. And this one is pretty simple, but I don't think we think of it intuitively. If you've ever played an instrument, if you've ever played a sport, you did drills, you practiced things, you put yourself through a series of experiences in the past to train your muscles to work a certain way in the future. The history of situations that you've been in the past affects your psychological muscles in the future, your way that you naturally make sense of the world. Those will all be affected by the history of situations you've been in because those situations leave a residue and shape those psychological processes to operate one way as opposed to another way. Okay, on to the second hypothesis. We often don't know why people do what they do. Okay? I think it's extraordinary how poorly we make judgments about the thoughts, feelings, intentions, and personalities of other people. Okay? We really do it poorly, and we do it poorly a lot of the time. This is a frequent occurrence, so frequent that social psychologists called this mistake the fundamental attribution error. We'll have a whole lecture on that. Don't worry about writing that down right now. But it's so important and so common, they called it the fundamental attribution error. Not the kind of sort of attribution error, but the all the time, this is the mistake we make attribution error. Okay? We're terrible at this, and I think it leads to a lot of the sort of suffering in everyday life and our interactions with the people that we interact with on a daily basis. I think we can sort of summarize one of the big parts of the problem if we think about sort of ourselves driving down the 405 or driving down, some 1 or 2 lane highway, some smaller highway. If I'm driving down the highway, okay, the only people who are sane and smart are the people driving at the same speed as me, right? The people who are driving faster than me are crazy, and the people who are driving slower than me are stupid or annoying. Right? Those are the options. Okay? What I don't realize when I make those judgments about those other people is that I don't always go the same speed. So if I start going faster, the people who used to be sane in my judgment are now stupid and annoying. And there's a smaller segment of people who seem crazy because I'm going faster. And you can run it the other way where I'm going slower, and now other people seem like they're crazy. The key thing is, when we make that judgment about other people, we don't take our own contribution, our own perspective, our own motivations at that moment into account. We think we're objectively seeing the world for what it is. Okay? So when other people do things differently than we think we would be doing things, or differently than we are doing things, okay, there's generally 4 options for how we think of those people. Okay? Crazy, mean, stupid, or biased. Those are the 4 options. We very, very rarely say, well, that's a very sensible other way of doing things, right? Because we're doing things in the sensible way. And I see reality for what it is. So if you saw for reality for what it was, you'd do the same thing I'm doing. And you're not, so there's something wrong with you. Okay? We're not just inaccurate about other people. Okay? We're inaccurate about ourselves, too. You might admit that you're not so good at making judgments all the time about other people. You'd say it's hard to know what's inside the heart and mind of another person. But it's easy for me to know what's inside my own heart and mind. I have special access to my own thoughts and feelings. Okay? This is what we call introspection. I can turn my mental abilities inward, and I can just zoom in and pull out whatever key information I need to know about myself, and I can do that in a way that no one else could possibly have access to. Right now I'm thinking of something, and there's no way any of you could know what it is, but I can know because I can introspect on my own experience. Okay? Now, this isn't always untrue, but it is often the case that when we think we are introspecting and we have this special privileged access to ourselves, that we're not doing what we think we're doing. And what we really are doing is constructing our experience, our thoughts, our feelings on the fly. And as a result of this, okay, we can make lots of mistakes about ourselves. Okay, now, I know you don't believe me yet. Okay? The norm I've learned is whenever I tell you that people sort of make mistakes about things, what they always think is, that's right, all these people around me, they do make that mistake. Okay? But it takes a long time and a lot of practice to get you to realize that you're the person who's around the other person who's thinking that right now. Okay? we all make these mistakes. And so we're going to spend time this quarter on that. Okay? The key issue here, and I think I've already alluded to it, the reason why we make mistakes about other people and about ourselves is that conscious experience is constructed. Okay? It's seamless, so seamless that it feels like we're just seeing reality at the moment it's happening, and there's nothing sort of between us and that reality. Okay? But in fact, it's constructed. And you already know this, right? Most of you probably learned at some point that there's no such thing as color, right? Most people learned that color does not exist out in the world. Color is something that's a byproduct of your mind and brain. You have a retina that works a certain way, rods, cones, visual cortex, all these things that convert different wavelengths into the experience of different colors. But there's no color out in the world. Okay, that's in your brain, and brains can work differently. Some people are colorblind, and it's not just that they don't see the color that's out there in the world, they don't construct the color in their brains. And you might all construct the color a little differently from one another, but you wouldn't know, because how would you compare notes on that, right? I think I see red a little differently than you. Okay, but still, I think we've taken it from the physicists and whoever sort of taught us this in science, maybe Psych 10, that we construct those visual aspects of the real world. We construct them in our heads. And what I will suggest to you is that social perception, like visual perception, is something that we construct in our heads. Okay? So, did anyone in here know that I was going to ask you? Did any of you know before you walked into the first class today that I was going to ask you to give me the finger? Okay, there's a few people, right? There's always, 10, 15 people. So somebody who took the class last year or something told you that that happens on the first day of class. By the way, don't tell anyone else, okay? But you knew, and as a result of knowing, you have what's sometimes referred to as the curse of knowledge. As a result of knowing, it is virtually impossible for you to appreciate the experience that everyone else in the class had. Okay? There's no way for you to simulate that same sort of tension, gut feeling that some other people in here probably had when they were sort of set up with the conflict of whether or not I'm respectful or obedient. Okay? So you can't appreciate that, and we sometimes refer to that in social psychology as an empathy gap. Okay? There's a gap between you and the other person in terms of your capacity to empathize with their experience. Okay, why is there this empathy gap in this case? Because you're in a different situation. You're in the situation where, this is the one where Professor Lieberman asked us all to give him the finger, and then afterwards he tells us about obedience to authority and all that nonsense. Okay? And everybody else is in the, I don't know what situation I'm in right now. Okay? And it is very difficult to jump from one to the other. In both cases, the situation that you're actually in is shaping your experience and making it almost impossible to appreciate the other person's experience. Okay? So that information about the situation you're in is part of the constructive process by which we make sense of what's going on, and it influences us in the different ways that I've been talking about so far. All right. Hypothesis 3, it only gets worse. Okay? We often don't know what we don't know. Okay, I read a lot of Dr. Seuss to my 2-year-old, and this sounds a little bit like Dr. Seuss. So here the point is, not only do we make all sorts of bad judgments about other people and ourselves, and we don't understand why people do what they do, and we don't understand why we do what we do, but we don't even know that we don't know those things. Okay? And you might say to yourself, well, how could I know what I don't know? That doesn't make any sense at all. But we know what we don't know a lot of the time. Imagine the test you didn't study quite as much as you should have for, and you go take the test, and you answer the multiple choice answers, right? So you have an answer that you've provided, and then if someone says, how confident are you in that answer? Oh, not very confident at all. I have no real idea, but I had to put something down, and that's my best guess. Okay, so we're willing to do that when we're learning organic chemistry or whatever it is, but we never do that, almost ever, when it comes to making sense of other people and ourselves. We never say, well, I think I might like doing this, but, maybe someone else would know better than me what I'd actually like, right? Oh, I could be wrong. Or, that person really seemed like a jerk to me, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe that was just something about the state I was in at the time. I'm not saying we never do that, because we do occasionally. But far more often, we don't. And this is one of the things that gets us into trouble. Because not only are we making all these mistakes, but we don't account for the fact that we might be making all these mistakes. And that leaves us not particularly open to other people's alternative perspectives on what they're doing and on what they think we're doing. Now, I think, this is the corollary to hypothesis 3, I think we are built not to know what we don't know. I think we are built not to recognize this bias that we have. Okay? I think we're built this way because it's adaptive and useful to have these biases, and these biases work especially well for us when they operate quickly, when they're fast-acting psychological processes. Okay? And in general, in human beings, fast-acting processes are those that occur outside of awareness. So if it's adaptive for them to be fast, and that means they occur outside of awareness, and they're biased, that means you're not likely to be aware of your bias. Your bias is being generated outside of awareness, so it's very difficult for you to know that. At the same time, while that bias can technically be a mistake, it can lead to better outcomes overall for you. Okay, so let me give you an example. Imagine that you're at home, you step outside the back door into the yard, assuming there's a yard there, and across the yard you see one of these. Right? What do? Okay, you immediately get out of harm's way. You run back inside. Right? That's the first thing the vast majority of us would do. Maybe the people who gave me the finger would do something a little more impulsive. I don't know. But most of you would get out of harm's way and run back inside. But the question you have to ask yourself, because I'm asking you to ask this, is, were you ever in harm's way? Were you ever in harm's way? See, the thing is, 90% of snakes, totally not dangerous. 90% not dangerous. The vast majority. Okay? This snake right here is a hognose, what's it called? Water snake? Hognose, I think I have it here. A hognose, right? It's a western hognose snake. And this one, if you go up to it and get too close to it, it literally just flips itself over and plays dead. Okay, that's how dangerous this one is. This one's not dangerous either, but this one, you can look it up on YouTube. Hognose snake. It's there. So you were never actually in harm's way, so you're factually inaccurate when you make this judgment that I need to get out of harm's way because that's a dangerous snake, but you're also alive. Okay, you're alive for sure because you treated this and all members of this class of snake as if they're dangerous. Okay, so here you've made an error. You thought a snake was dangerous when it wasn't. But imagine the opposite error. Imagine that it's one of those 10% of the snakes that are dangerous. That error is so costly, could cost you your life. That error is so costly that we're built to be dramatically biased in the other way so that we make mistakes 90% of the time, but we're also safe. So yes, informationally, we got the wrong answer on the test, but we're also still alive, and every once in a while, this error that we make will lead to a decision that could actually save our lives. Okay? There's no real cost to the mistake in this case. Okay? And the benefit on the few times that it is relevant is a really, really big benefit. Now, applying this, I need to know a lot less than I would if I didn't have this built-in bias to sort of treat all snakes as harmful, right? If I didn't know, I'd have to, like, go get my snake book, right? Because everyone's got their snake book, right? And then you'd have to go out and go up real close to the snake and start paging through the snake book going, yep, it's not that one. Yep, it's not that one, right? That's not a real good strategy for figuring this out. So we're built with this really fast-acting, non-thought-dependent bias. Okay, you don't have to think this through. And then, boom, we're out of the situation. Now, for lots of cases, this is a very adaptive way for us to function. We're going to spend one lecture this quarter talking about where one of the cases where this kind of bias gets us into a whole mess of trouble. When we talk about stereotyping and prejudice, this same kind of bias may be at work, but it creates lots of problems, most of which I'm sure you're all aware of, so I don't need to belabor that right here. Now, following on this piece, okay, we often don't know about this bias because these judgments are made automatically. Okay? So when you're standing back on the back porch, when we think back on it, we think that we did something like, we saw the snake and then we decided, oh, snakes are dangerous, so I better get back inside. Okay? And what I'm going to argue throughout this quarter is that's not the way it works at all. You didn't see the snake and then decide it was dangerous. We see dangerous snakes. It all occurs at once. Okay? You don't see the front of the room and then decide this is white. You see it all at once. Okay? In the same way, the social and emotional things that we see around us, we see at the very moment that we see them. We don't consciously decide who's angry and who's being generous. We see the behavior, and that behavior already comes with this interpretation that's built into our immediate experience. So we see dangerous snakes. We do not see snakes and then decide they were dangerous. Because if we did, that would increase the likelihood that we'd get bit. Oh, okay. I thought someone had a very weird cell phone on that side of the room. But really it's just someone shaving outside. Okay, so we've been through all these ways in which we're awful, terrible people that don't understand anything about anything. And so I like to then turn to hypothesis 4, finally some good news. It's amazing that we are as accurate as we are about why people do what they do, and about what kind of people they are. All right. Now, I know right now you're thinking, I'm totally screwed on the exam. Because he just said two totally opposite things, and he's going to pretend one of them is true when he gives us a multiple choice question, and then I'm just screwed. Okay? Well, you're not. In part because I'm not going to talk about this one until after the midterm. But that's not the real reason. We are really good at making sense of other people, and sort of let me explain why. So some of you are going to come to me after the midterm. You're going to come to my office hours, because nobody will come to my office hours before the midterm, until the day before the midterm, that is. And you'll say, Dr. Lieberman, I love this class, it's great, but it's so damn depressing. You just keep telling us how terrible we are at everything, and we can't make sense of anything, and that's all true. Okay? But, given all that, given how bad we are, and given how bad we could be after I describe a lot of the mechanisms that are at work for us, I think you'll find it amazing some of the things that we can do really well. Okay? So there are some things that we do extraordinarily well in terms of making sense of other people. We can judge their personality incredibly accurately under certain circumstances by just seeing that person for 2 seconds. Okay, so Malcolm Gladwell popularized the term thin slices. in his book Blink. But actually this idea of thin slices comes from Naval Neon Body's work. And it's a very powerful idea that from based on just 2 seconds of information about a person, you can make certain judgments incredibly accurately. And we'll spend time on that later in the quarter. Now I'm going to bug you even more because I'm going to tell you that the reason we do these things that we do well, really well, is because we do them automatically. See, I just told you the reason we do things so badly is because we do them automatically. And now I'm going to tell you the reason we do things well is also because we do them automatically. We have lots of automatic biases that get us into trouble. But if you're raised in a specific culture, in a stable environment where there's certain sort of norms and relationships that repeat themselves again and again and again, like every time someone looks angry, it means they are angry. Okay? If there's that kind of stable relationship, we have these mechanisms within us that are exquisitely tuned to slowly learn over many, many days, weeks, months of experience what those associations are. We don't consciously recognize them. We don't necessarily consciously know how we know those associations. Okay? But for some things, we can automatically learn to make exquisite judgments about other people, not so much about ourselves. I'm not really going to be able to help you much with that one. We're mostly just wrong about ourselves. And if you want to know how to get good information about yourself, ask someone next to you what they think you should do, and trust me, they'll give you a better answer than you'll give yourself. But we'll get to that later in the quarter. If you're having trouble still with this idea that something could both help you and hurt you, think about car racers, right? Auto racers. What do they need to go fast? Well, I mean, to win, they need to go fast. Okay? But going really fast is also the thing that's most likely to get you into a car accident. Okay? So going fast can be a good or a bad thing depending on what else in the environment it interacts with. All right, last hypothesis, number 5. People have 2 fundamental social motivations. Okay? And I'm not going to say much about these now other than to just state them. The first of these motivations is that people want to be liked and have a need to belong. And I don't describe this as a want to belong, because that's not what I mean. I mean it is a fundamental need, and I'll actually make the argument that our need to belong in some ways is more fundamental to our survival than food, water, and shelter. Okay, but you're not going to hear about that until the very end of the quarter. Oh, I've got you so tempted now. And then the other corollary here is that people want to be accurate, consistent, and authentic. They want to be consistent in the eyes of other people, but they also want to be consistent in their own eyes. And this leads people to do some pretty interesting things that we'll talk about in a few weeks, where our desire to seem consistent to ourselves lead us to engage in some contorted behaviors and other things that I will come back to. I should also point out that wanting to be liked and having a need to belong, part of the way we know whether we're being liked and whether or not that need is being met is our view of ourself. So one of the things I'll suggest to you is that part of what self-esteem represents is our own best guess as to what other people are likely to think of us. Self-esteem, of course, seems like a very personal thing, but there's, I think, a pretty compelling theory that that's actually a very social thing that we use as a guess as to how people around us are viewing us. All right, so these are the 5 hypotheses, and I came to the classroom yesterday, so I know that none of you in the back of the room can read this. Okay? Because I already went back there, and I know you can't read that, but you'll be able to download all the slides, so you will have these in one place. Can the TAs pass out the syllabi now? So I'm going to take a few minutes to talk about the course mechanics. So we probably got another 5 or 8 minutes, which will make this the first time I ever finish the first lecture on time. You should take the syllabus. Okay, we're still going. Class isn't over. I can hear you. All of you. You. So you should take the syllabus as a rough guide as to what's going to happen this quarter. It will change along the way. And it will change because I will undoubtedly get behind on the lectures. I do every year. But that's okay, because I try to put the most important stuff at the beginning so that I can't miss that. Okay? In this course, there are 2 exams. There's a midterm and a final. They're both multiple choice exams. They are not cumulative. Well, the midterm is cumulative up till the midterm. The final will cover material from the midterm until the final. Okay. They will each be somewhere in the neighborhood of 50, 45 multiple choice questions. Okay. And the final, as I just said, is no longer than the midterm. So even though you'll take it during the final exam period, it's really just the exam for the second half of the class that you happen to take during the final big capital F final exam period. Those are each worth 40% of your grade. Section is worth 18% of your grade. Okay? And I'll talk more about section in a minute. And attendance in this class is worth 2% of your grade. Now, I have to explain this. I've never actually done attendance in this class before, but I'm doing something else I've never done before in this class either, which is I'm having the class video recorded. Okay? I figured I should do that once while I can still remember all my material, so that later when I can't remember my material, say in 5 or 6 years, I can go back, watch myself, and say, oh yeah, that's what I said there. So I'm video recording it, but I also know from the stats from the people who do Bruincast that video recording tends to diminish attendance. So if you don't care about 2% of your grade, I'm totally cool with that, but that's going to be what's going to happen. And what that means is twice during the year, I will take attendance. And I'm not talking about at the midterm and final. Okay? Twice during the year, I will take attendance, and those are worth 1% each. If you're here, you get the whole point. Okay? That's actually probably the easiest points you could get, but, like if I was taking the class pass-fail, I wouldn't care about that at all. So that's, that's your choice, as with getting all the points associated with this. That's your choice. Actually, I want to ask you guys to hand these out as well. I'm going to jump a little bit ahead. So just scatter these. Don't hand one out to the person next to each other. There's only 20 of each of those. And make sure, Curtis and Carrie, you have different ones. So make sure yours get over there and yours get over there too. What I'm passing out right now are 2 lists that you can sign up on. Okay? One list is a list if you are interested in being contacted about research opportunities, research assistantship opportunities. That is, if you would like to be an RA, I will compile this list. Actually, my lab manager will compile this list. And I will make this list available to all the faculty and graduate students in social psychology. And then if they're looking for research assistants, they, to the extent that they choose to, can email that list and see who's interested. So sign up on that list if you have an interest. There's no harm done except you might get 3 or 4 emails. The other list is more personally relevant to me. The other list has the brains on top of it. And I do brain research. So if you're interested in being a subject in fMRI studies, where you might get paid $25 for an hour, maybe more depending on what we're doing, and if you'd like to get a picture of your brain so you can prove to your parents that you have one, we can supply that. Okay? Sign up on that other list, fill out those forms as requested. If it doesn't come to you, the forms, if you have a form at the end of the class, please bring it to the front. If you didn't get to sign up and you would like to, just come to the front where all the forms are going to come, and you can sign up there. Okay, back to the course mechanics. Okay, this is very important. I'm going to explain the curve now. I really thought that would get everyone quiet. The curve, the thing that will actually determine your grade at the end of the quarter. I do a curve differently than anyone else you've ever had, probably. I've tried to tweak this way of doing things over the 15 times I've taught the class, and I think this one works best. If I do a pure curve, then we get the same distribution of grades no matter what, and all that really matters is whether I give a hard test or an easy test. If it's a hard test, everyone gets low scores and they get bumped up. If there's an easy test, everyone gets high scores, they get moved down, and everyone gets really mad, because that happened once, so not doing that again. If I don't do a curve and I just say 90, 80, 70, 60, then you're completely at the whim of how hard of a test I write. I can make sure everyone fails. I can make sure everyone gets an A. That shouldn't be what determines your grade. So I have this hybrid model for the curve that I didn't come up with. I read it in a book, but I liked it. Here's the way the curve works. There's going to be all the different scores you get, your midterm, final, section, and attendance, and those will add up to a total of a possible 100 points. So everyone will have a score between 0 and 100. Hopefully no one's too close to 0. Okay? But you'll have a score, and then what I will do is I will take the average of the top 10 final scores in the class. Okay? And that average essentially now sets the 100% mark. Okay? So if you want to get somewhere in the A range, and by that I mean A minus or higher, you need to get 90% of what that top 10 average is. And if you want to get somewhere in the B range, you need to get 80% of somewhere, 80% of that top 10 person average, and so on down the line. Okay? So if my tests are really, really hard, that top 10 average is going to be lower. And that then allows everyone to sort of be affected by that. If my tests are easy and everyone at the top 10 gets 100, then that means that that's a fair place to say you should be able to get 90% of that if you want an A minus or higher in the class. One of the side benefits of this is you're not competing with each other. Everyone can get an A. Every single person in here can get an A. Because if the average top score is, say, a 97, there's nothing to stop everyone else in the class from getting a 92. There's nothing. So I prefer to have a classroom that's that way, where you're not competing with each other, where someone else doing well means by the curve you're going to do worse. I've already talked about adding the class. You basically can't at this point unless the enrollment drops below 350. Later in the course, somewhere after the midterm probably, I will do an entire lecture after class, not in class itself, but at another time where I'll discuss everything you should know if you're thinking about going to grad school in psychology, particularly social psychology, but it'll be relevant to other forms as well, a little less relevant to clinical or social work. But the first thing I'll tell you then is that if you're not already doing research and you want to go to grad school, you need to start doing it as soon as possible. So that's why I pass out these sign-up sheets today instead of waiting till I give you that lecture, at which point you would say, why didn't you tell us the first day of class? Well, here I am telling you the first day of class. If you want to go to graduate school and you're not doing research yet, the other people you're competing with to get into graduate school are. Okay? They'll get in. Maybe you will, maybe you won't, but you can up your odds. Everything for the Blackboard will be at this website, which I'm guessing most of you know the Blackboard web address better than I do. Everything will also be the video podcasts, and the audio podcast will be at bruincast.com, but it's always a day later that it's at bruincast.com, so it won't be there in 2 hours. Okay, it'll be there tomorrow. We're not actually done yet. We're getting there, but we're not done yet. Okay, and don't make me put my suit jacket back on. I really don't want to. The TAs. 3 of the 4 TAs are still here. One of them had to run off to another appointment. Could the TA stand up for a second just so I can point them out to everyone? So this is Megan in blue, Megan Meyer, Curtis Yee, and then Carrie, Dylan O'Neill. Those are your TAs, and Lynette Lau-Schumann is not here. You might have seen her run out about 20 minutes ago. She had to go somewhere else. They're all of your TAs, so if your TA isn't available and you have a question, feel free to go to one of the other TAs. Now, what are you going to do in section? Well, I hated most sections I had as an undergraduate. I thought they were a waste of time. I'm guessing you frequently think that they're a waste of time. And trust me, mine will be a waste of time. No, I'm kidding. You're going to do a couple of different things in section. There's going to be some demonstrations that you're going to do for next week. So there's no sections this week. Okay? No sections last week, so I hope you didn't go. No sections this week. Your first section, the first time anyone should be going to section is Monday, October 5th, next Monday. Okay? You will be doing demonstrations the first and last week of class, and this is on your syllabus. So on the third page of your syllabus, it tells you what you're doing each week. So you're doing exercises in week 2 and week 9. There are midterm and final review sections, week 5 and week 10. There is no section week 6, because that always ends up being screwed up because there's an exam in week 6. And so some people would want to only, it wouldn't be fair to assign work to people who have the section on Monday. It gets screwed up. Now, what you're going to do the other 4 sections is read major chunks of these books that I've assigned. And there's a big change on your syllabus. Your syllabus says week 6, the tipping point, week 7, difficult conversations, right? That's what it says on yours. I changed that between yesterday when I printed these and now when I thought better of it. So, week 6 should say no section. Week 7 should say The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell, chapters 1 to 4. And you're no longer reading difficult conversations. You're welcome to read it. It's a good book. But we're not going to have a section on that because it ends up screwing up too many things. You're going to read chunks of these books, and I'm sure that for each of you there will be one of these books that you don't love. But I'm hoping that for each of you there will also be 2 or 3 that you absolutely love and can't wait to make somebody else in your family or dorm room read, because that's what often happens. You'll be reading those books and discussing them in section, and they will not be tightly tied to the lecture. They will be loosely tied to the lecture. Okay? The point of section is that at UCLA, you don't get into small groups very often where you can have genuine discussion time. And if you're just rediscussing the lecture, that's question and answer. That's not discussion. So what I want you to do is to read those books and come to section to have just a good conversation about that content or whatever, wherever it leads. And your TA's job is to guide that conversation. Okay? There will be questions about those books on the exam, but we will give you very specific guidance about what you do and don't need to know from the books. So when you read the books, don't read them for memorization. Please don't read them for memorization. I guarantee that after the midterm you'll say, I didn't need to read those books for memorization. You gave us exactly the information we needed before the midterm. I want you to read those books to be able to have a good discussion. Participation in section counts for 1/3 of your section grade. That means it's 6% of your section grade, or your 6% of your total grade. Attendance counts. And then we're giving you one gimme. You can skip one of the real sections. So you have to go to 5 of the 6 sections. You can choose to skip next week. But if you skip next week, you don't get a freebie for anything else short of jail or death. Okay? So I don't want to hear in week 5 that you were sick and, I took off week 2 because there was like a Frisbee tournament that I wanted to go to. So can I still get off week 5? No, you used your freebie. Save your freebie up. If you don't, that's on you. These are the books that you'll be reading. Notice this one is crossed out. Don't read it unless you want to. It's a good book. Any questions before we break? And let's be quiet while other people are asking questions, because it's kind of rude to talk while they're talking. Week 6 is no section, and what was listed on week 6 is now week 7. The accurate syllabus will be on the Blackboard website as soon as I can get fast access to the Blackboard website. The PowerPoint slides will also go up, hopefully today. And here's a key thing for you. Somebody's going to be tempted to ask me, can you put the PowerPoint slides up before lecture? And I will just tell you that I have said no to 497 different people, and you can be number 498 but I wouldn't recommend it. There's a reason why I put them up afterwards, and that's because it's a little bit like a magic show and some of the stuff we do in here, and everyone knows once you know the trick, it's not interesting to watch the trick. So I don't want you to be like those people who knew that I was going to ask you to give me the finger. I want you to be like all those people who didn't know. So I will put the lectures up afterwards. You'll always have the video podcast the next day, the audio podcast. I think that should be enough to tide everyone over. Yeah. Oh, 2 things about office hours. This is key. That's also mistaken on your syllabus slightly. So they say 1 to 3 on there, but I teach at 3, and then people show up at 2:55, and I'm like, sorry, I got to go. So they're 12:30 to 2:30. I'll put that on Blackboard as well. So Wednesday, 12:30 to 2:30, and if you cannot make those office hours, email me, and we'll find another time to meet. If you have those forms that I asked you to pass out, please put them up here on the stage, and if you want to fill them out and didn't get a chance, please come up and fill them out. I'll stay up here to answer other questions. See you Thursday. Okay. I don't. Nope. Sorry. What's your name? Monique. I'll see you tomorrow. So. Sure.
I kind of know the answer, but I wanted to hear an answer on what's the difference between social psychology
Okay.
and community psychology.
I don't even know what community psychology is.
Really?
I assume it's some kind of therapy-based thing, but I don't actually know. So I'm the wrong person.
Okay. All right, thanks.
I was wondering how I could change a section or.
So remind me at the beginning of class on Thursday, that's another math lecture. So there's sort of 2 ways to deal with section changes. One is I'll say everyone who's open and willing to or needs to change sections should come up at the end of class on Thursday so they can talk. And then I'll set up a board on the Blackboard where anyone who wants to change sections can try to do it there. But other than that, you do have to go to the section that you're assigned to unless you formally switch with someone else, because otherwise the other person will take attendance and think you're not there at the time.
So, is there any way I can find out emails?
No, I can't sort of give out the email, but I can have you post to the board, and I can send an email to everyone saying, if you're interested